Sorry, let me get situated here. All right. Here we go. I know. Good morning, everybody. As I said at the beginning, it's good to be back at Meridian Friends today. I have to point out right from the beginning, I do have sermon notes for you this morning. This is my third time, and I've got some notes for you. I wrote, I'm a dad now. The last two times I preached, I wasn't a dad yet, but now I'm a dad, so I'm more mature, and I'm wiser. So I gave you notes. There you go. They may look like a crossword puzzle to you, and that's because they are. I love crossword puzzles. I'm glad that Alma is here today, because I'm going to talk about her in just a second. But I have the New York Times crossword puzzle app, and I try to do the daily puzzle every single day. They just have like a little mini puzzle that's like usually between 6 to 10 things, and I try to do that every day. And for Pastor Appreciation Month, Alma gave me a crossword puzzle book. She didn't know that I liked crossword puzzles at the time, but I told her that. I wrote in my thank you card, like, thank you so much. And she actually, I think she wrote on the thing, like, maybe the youth will like these crossword puzzles. And I wrote back, like, I'm not giving these to the youth. I'm giving these to me because I like crossword puzzles. And it was good timing. Ken and I actually went on a trip to Ohio that November, and I took it with me on the plane, and I was doing crossword puzzles on the plane. And I told her how much I loved it, and since then she's given me one or two more crossword puzzle books that I haven't been able to finish all of them yet, but I just love crossword puzzles. So yeah, there is your notes, your crossword puzzle notes that you can fill in as we go along. So as you probably know, last Sunday, me and a few other people, Elisa, Pam, Wittrock, Lana, Ken and Teresa, we were all gone in Newberg, Oregon, at George Fox University for our annual business sessions. And Pastor Ken is the clerk of the yearly meeting, so he had quite a busy few days there leading those business sessions each morning. Which reminds me, we do have a business meeting next Sunday. They're doing it at 11, so please be there. But I after sitting basically through 7 hours of a business meeting last week over 2 different days, next Sunday is going to be a walk in the park, you know. I don't anticipate that we'll be here for 7 hours, hopefully. So if Meridian Friends is your home church, please plan to be here for the business meeting next Sunday. I did see the packets on the mail table in the other room, and I'm sure they've been emailed out at this point, so you can go grab those. But after everything ended on Wednesday, Ken and his family stayed in Oregon for a vacation, so they're still over there. And this was the first time since 2019 that the business sessions were happening in person. The last 2 years it's been exclusively online. So it was nice to get back over there and spend a little time with some of the people over there. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But, am I going to work here? I don't know. Maybe this thing needs new batteries. But Chris, you can advance it right now. Maybe not. I can't get the batteries out. There we go. So, I hope you enjoyed the sermon last Sunday. Let me just see. Oh, there we go. Hope you enjoyed the sermon last Sunday from our superintendent, Jim Lashana. Perhaps some of you even tuned in throughout the rest of the week for some of the business sessions or the workshops. Those were available online. If not, you can still find Jim's message if you missed it last Sunday. It's on our Facebook or YouTube channel. But I can also get you access to any of those workshops or anything. If you'd be interested in that, they'll still be available. But last Sunday, I got on a plane pretty early to fly to Oregon, and I got picked up at the airport by Pastor Ken, but not our Pastor Ken, a different Pastor Ken. I quickly learned that we're not the only church that has a Ken problem, you know? We got Ken Redford, Ken. We got so many Kens here. They have a bunch of Kens there. So I got picked up by Ken Comfort. He's the pastor at Clackamas Park Friends Church, They live really close to the airport. And so I flew in at 7:30, and I even told him, like, I know that's really early, like, and he volunteered to pick me up from the airport. I said, I can sit there all morning. You do your thing at the church, and then come get me at noon. I'll entertain myself. And he was like, no, I'll come get you at 7:30, and then you can just come to church with me. So I was like, all right, if that's what you want to do. So I ended up going to with them to Clackamas Park Friends Church. And it was really interesting because I knew that every church in the early meeting was going to be watching the same message, but I just kind of got to experience that from a different perspective. So it was kind of cool for me to be there in this church in Oregon and be watching this message that I knew that you guys were watching here in Idaho. So it was just kind of a cool way to experience that, and that's kind of what the intention of that has been, to kind of unify the churches on that Sunday morning. You guys got done with it way sooner than I did over there because their church starts at 11, and with the time difference. But it was just cool to experience all the churches kind of watching that message together. And so once again, that's still available online if you missed it and if you'd be interested in watching that. I think it was a good message and a good way to start off our yearly meeting. So when Pastor Ken asked me to preach a few weeks ago, he said I could continue in Philippians like he's been going through, or I could do my own thing. I figured I'd just stay in the Philippians series to keep continuity for everybody, especially knowing that last week we would break that with the yearly meeting thing, and then if I did something different this week, by the time Ken got back into Philippians, it would be like 3 weeks since the last one. So I figured I would just keep in Philippians for his sake. Then, when he told me the passage that would be on my week, I was kind of like, I don't know about that. Not because it was like controversial or anything, but I was just like, I don't know. I remembered back when I was in college, one of our, I guess it was a preaching class or whatever, one whole day they debated like certain passages in the Bible, and it was like, would you preach from this passage on Sunday morning? One of the examples is Mark 16, verses 9 through 20. So there's like a little footnote right above that passage that says like most early manuscripts did not include this passage. And so they would like debate like, should you preach from this or should you not? And at the time I was like, I don't know, But they got very heated about that. So this passage is not anything like that, and there's not really any controversial stuff, but it was just, I was like, I don't know how I would draw that out into, a whole sermon, because it's a little short. And at first glance, it seemed pretty basic, and like I said, not much to fill out for a whole sermon, at least not 40 minutes worth. So you're probably in for a shorter message today, which was always going to be the case with me up here instead of Ken. So let's go ahead and turn to Philippians chapter 2, the end of chapter 2, verses 19 through 30. You can stand with me as we read this. This is on page 981 in the Sanctuary Bibles, if you're using those. So, this is, once again, Philippians 2, 19 to the end of the chapter. It says, I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon, so that I too may be cheered by news of you. For I have no one like him who will be genuinely concerned for your welfare. For they all seek their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. But you know Timothy's proven worth, how as a son with a father he has served with me in the gospel. I hope, therefore, to send him just as soon as I see how it will go with me, and I trust in the Lord that shortly I myself will come also. I have thought it necessary to send you Epaphroditus, my brother and fellow worker and fellow soldier, and your messenger and minister to my need. For he has been longing for you all and has been distressed because you heard that he was ill. Indeed, he was ill, near to death. But God had mercy on him, and not only on him, but on me also, lest I should have sorrow upon my sorrow. I am the more eager to send him, therefore, that you may rejoice at seeing him again, and that I may be less anxious. So receive him in the Lord with all joy and honor such men, for he nearly died for the work of Christ, risking his life to complete what was lacking in your service to me. You may be seated. Okay, so I got to say, just right off the bat, the first couple times that I read this, I was like, Paul really wants you to know that Epaphroditus almost died. You know, he like really hits home that point. It's almost annoying in the end there. It's like, yes, we get it, we understand. You ever have someone tell you a story and they just keep like stressing one point, and you're like, oh, I heard you. I know, you said that already. So it kind of felt like that. In that one paragraph, he tells you like 4 times that this guy was sick and he was almost dead, but he's alive, but he almost died. And you're like, yes, we know. You said that. So I just thought that was funny. So at first glance, a lot of this just seems like travel plans, and that's kind of why I was like, what am I going to do with this? And in fact, there are a lot of travel plans within this short chunk. It's important to have travel plans. You know, nobody wants to start a trip journeying off on the wrong foot. Makes me think of like the movie Home Alone, you know, where they all wake up late and then they're scrambling to the airport and they leave Kevin home alone. You know, no one wants that. So it's important to have a plan and an itinerary and all that kind of stuff. But you got to also be flexible and leave some room for changed flights and lost luggage. I've heard some horror stories recently with all the airport stuff going on. So Paul is talking about how he hopes to send Timothy in verse 19. Later in verse 23, he hits that point again, how he hopes to send Timothy soon. He also says if everything goes well, that he hopes he's going to join them. And then in the next paragraph, he gets into Epaphroditus and how Paul thinks it's important to send him and explains why. So once again, on the surface, this looks just like travel plans, which it does have a lot of that in there, but there's a bit more. So, because otherwise he could just say, I also plan to send Timothy and Epaphroditus and leave it at that. But it's kind of drawn out into a little bit longer. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit here to cover some stuff that Pastor Ken has done the past couple times when he was preaching on Philippians, just to fill this in. But think back a couple weeks ago when Ken was in chapter 1. In chapter 1, verse 27, it says, only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or I am absent, I may hear of you that you are standing firm in one spirit, with one mind, striving side by side for the faith of the gospel. So here at the beginning, Paul was encouraging them to let their lives be worthy of the gospel. He wants them to be in one spirit, one mind, working side by side. And that's a big thing to ask, as Ken has already talked about, and we've hit this point home. But especially in today's world, it seems like, you know, getting people together and agreeing on things can be near impossible. Trying to get a group of people with one mind, as it says, on a topic today just seems like a daunting task. I wrote, just try to get a small group of people together and order a pizza and agree on just 2 toppings. It would probably be kind of hard to do. You're probably going to have to get multiple pizzas or a split half and half, you know, just to accommodate people. Then the next week, when Ken was in chapter 2, we read this as a way to help achieve the unity in one spirit. It says in chapter 2, verses 3 and 4, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interest of others. So nothing from selfish ambition. Count others better than you. Don't look to your own interests. These are things we've already mentioned, but these are very hard to do, right? I think we all would agree with that, let alone to do them on a regular basis, like daily, and probably even harder to do for complete strangers. Like, it's easy to do that for your friend or your family, but someone that you don't know. It's a little hard. So just giving a bit of a refresher since we had last week off with the yearly meeting stuff. But now we get to Timothy and today's stuff. So Paul puts Timothy forward as someone who's an example of these kind of things that he's been talking about earlier in the chapter. He says that he has nobody like Timothy. I put a few quotes here from the chapter. I have nobody like him. He says he's genuinely concerned with your welfare. He says everybody else seeks their own interests, but not Timothy. He serves, and he serves Jesus. So I don't know how you'd feel if you were reading this and you were another one of Paul's friends, and he says, like, I have nobody like Timothy, and you're like, what? What about me? But that's just what he says. So he says, Paul is basically saying that Timothy is the kind of person that I've been talking about. All this stuff I've mentioned in chapter 1 and chapter 2, you might think that sounds impossible and no one can do it. Well, I know someone in real life who is like this, and his name is Timothy. So kind of just proving to them, like, it is achievable, and I know people like this. So he's saying, look to Timothy. It's not impossible. I know people who can behave this way. And then Epaphroditus as well, which is kind of a interesting name. For a while, when I was leading up to this, I was thinking, I'm just going to call this guy like E or something. But after watching a few videos, I figured out how to say his name, and I got it down. But Epaphroditus, well, maybe I'm not saying it right, but that's what one of the videos I watched. So he does the same with this guy, with Epaphroditus. He goes on to say some amazing things about this guy, sprinkled in with all the travel plans, as we mentioned. He says he's a worker and a fellow soldier. That's one of your crossword puzzles right there. Paul wants them to receive Epaphroditus with joy and to honor such men, comparing him and grouping him in the same with Timothy right there, saying honor such men, like honor these kind of guys. So he's kind of putting him on the same level with Timothy. This last one seems a little backhanded, kind of. He says, he nearly died for the work of Christ to complete the work that was lacking from your service to me. Kind of like, you guys failed me, but he did it, and he finished the job, and he almost died doing it, So it's like, dang, if you were reading this, you're like, we must have messed up pretty bad, and this guy picked up the slack here. That's kind of tiny to read. I apologize for that. So Paul is giving positive examples here of good character and the character that he's referencing and talking about in the earlier chapters. This is the kind of stuff that we are called to, and here are examples of it. So take some time to think of someone who fits these categories for you. Hopefully you have them, but someone who genuinely cares for you, someone who doesn't seek their own interests, who is someone that you rejoice to see. Those are the kind of things that he mentions about these guys. So think of someone who fits those categories for you. Like I said, hopefully you have a handful of them there. You can jot them down on the side or whatever. And then on the flip side of that, are you that type of person for other people? Do you genuinely care for other people? Do you seek to put others' interests above your own? Do you seek to serve Christ at the expense of your own wants? Once again, as I said before, I'd like to say yes to that I am this person. Of course I'm this person. But I know that I'm not always this person. I can get selfish and cranky and only be concerned for myself. I have a kind of funny story here, but one morning at yearly meeting in one of the business sessions, we would meet for like 3.5 hours. So they'd give us breaks in between. And at one of the breaks, Ken was like, there was coffee and snacks in the hallway, and he said, there are only 40 cookies out there, so be quick. And like you, people are kind of laughing, like, ha, 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 because there was definitely more than 40 of us there. And I was sitting next to Chris Hinderleiter. He's the pastor at Melba Friends Church, and I kind of leaned over to him, and I was like, I'm going to go get one of those 40 cookies. And he said, I think that was a joke. Like, surely there's enough cookies for everybody. But I don't know, just the way Ken said it, it didn't seem like something, it seemed like he was being serious. So I got up quickly, I exited to the hallway. I was kind of sitting near the front of the place there. And I walked very quickly to the table in the back, and I even sped past some people. I'm not going to say I cut in front of people, but because there wasn't really an organized line, but I got in front of people. And it turned out to be true. I don't know why, but there was only 40 cookies. And I took one, and I got one. So, that's kind of a silly example, but it just shows, like, how easily we're like, I don't care about anybody here. I'm getting one for me. So as Christians, we need to be living and behaving in ways that are honoring to Christ, that are helpful and uplifting to those around, that kind of fit into these character categories here that Paul's talking about. This leads into thinking about how we genuinely care for the welfare of the whole world. And that's kind of daunting to think about sometimes. It's such a huge task, and When we say like, we're going to care for everybody, or we're going to care for the lost, or I'm going to care for my community, it sounds good, but it's hard sometimes to envision what that means, because it's kind of like a nameless group. When we say like, I'm going to care for the lost, and you're like, okay, but who are the lost? Or I'm going to care for the community, but I don't know who my community is. I don't talk to anybody in my community. So those kind of things are so big and so vast, and they can kind of become daunting. But having one or two specific people in mind can make it easier and more tangible. So when you think about genuinely being concerned for the welfare of your friend, and if you actually have a name and a face in mind, then it becomes easier to practically think about what it means to genuinely care for that person and put their needs above yours and to reach out to them, as opposed to just like a nebulous, faceless group. So one way that you genuinely care for people is by spending time with them. A lot of us may have many different friends on social media. You may see pictures and comments from them on a daily basis, but that's much different than spending time with somebody in person. So I read this quote recently. It says, as technology increases in our world and as personal touch decreases in our world, that good friends, the right kind of people, are going to be in even greater demand. And I was reminded of that this past week at Yearly Meeting. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, the past 2 years have been completely online through Zoom sessions and webinar classes and things like that. It did work, and it was functional, and we were able to, have the meetings and get the business done. But at many times, if you were a part of that, or if you've ever been a part of things like that, you couldn't see people's faces, and some of the way that they had some of the webinars set up, like it was just the presenter speaking, and you couldn't see anybody else. You could just read comments. And so, once again, it was functional. It got things done, but it was very different than being in person. Sorry, I lost my place here. And one thing that I liked about it at the time, but now I'm realizing, that was just for convenience. Before, you could be online and you'd just be at your house, like watching the business sessions, and then they'd be like, all right, we're going to break for lunch, and you would just flip your computer shut and go eat lunch in your kitchen and all this kind of stuff, and it's convenient because it's like, ooh, I could go run out and mow my lawn really quick too, or I could, more realistically for me, probably like watch TV for a little bit here. But, so when you're in person, during meals like this past week, you're always with people, you're constantly in conversation with other people. During the online version last year, they tried to have a group hangout thing in the evening. Usually in the evenings they have like some kind of snack in the dining hall or outside, and people are just congregating, and you're just kind of talking to this person for a little bit, then you're talking to this person for a little bit. So they tried to do that, I think, a year or two ago, but as many of you know on Zoom, like multiple people cannot speak at once. It would just be like impossible to understand. So it ended up just being like one person talking and asking a question to one person, and everyone else just listening to one person's conversation. So the community aspect was really different the last couple years. So being in person again, that was nice to have back. And I sat in on some amazing workshops during the week from Stan Leach, who is a part of Evangelical Friends Mission. We had some great worship in the evenings, the business sessions, all this kind of stuff was really great. But I would say the best part for me of the week was just the meal time, eating breakfast or lunch or dinner. Not because of the food. I mean, the food was good, but just spending that time with other pastors and people from the Yearly Meeting and just chatting with them and making those connections. I got to meet, I don't know actually how new he is, but the pastor at South Salem Friends Church. His name's Austin, and he's been there for a couple months now, and I would have never met this guy before. He's my age, so that was really nice to chat with him a few meals and get to meet this new guy to the Yearly Meeting, which would have never happened if we did it online. And so now when people say things like, pray for the pastors of our Yearly Meeting or pray for the churches of our Yearly Meeting, I have like actual connection points. I can think of this guy, Austin, who I've actually chatted with, or like Clackamas Park. I've always heard about Clackamas Park Friends Church, but I've never been there. And I got to go to church there this past Sunday. And so now I know what their building is like. I know some of the people in their congregation. Like, it just makes it more real when I think about that place or if someone talks about that. So you can actually, like, care for the people there and the needs and serve them. And we can't know every single person like that. Once again, there was plenty of people at yearly meeting that I didn't talk to, that I didn't have a chance to. So it's not possible for all of us to meet every single person, but to have a few people in our lives that we can do this for. So I want to challenge you guys this week to pick one friend, or maybe, pick one friend you maybe haven't gotten together with in a while and reach out to them this week. Invite them to coffee or lunch and try to get together with them. Secondly, this passage shows that Timothy has proven loyalty and dedication to the Great Commission. As I already mentioned, it says, and I got up here, for they all seek their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ, but you know Timothy has proven himself. Timothy has proven his worth, how as a son with his father he has served with me in the gospel. What this means is that he has a mind focused on the Great Commission. He's focused on the kingdom of Jesus Christ. He wants to build the kingdom. He's thinking Christ's thoughts after him. He's thinking, what does Jesus care for except his own glory and the building up of the kingdom and the benefit of the people of God. So, as has already been mentioned, as I was writing this may me think about Lana. And so, she's already mentioned, and I'm going to hopefully not mess this up here, but Lana, if you don't know, she was commissioned this past week at yearly meeting. They have a missions banquet on the first night by Evangelical Friends Mission. She's going to be serving internationally in Palestine beginning this fall. I asked her, she said she plans to be out by September with an organization called STEP International for teaching abroad. And she's been thinking about this for a while, and last Sunday night during the missions banquet at yearly meeting, we got to hear a little bit from Lana and EFM, and they had a time of prayer for her. And I stole this from an email that was sent out a while ago, Lana, so hopefully it's still accurate here. But she says that EFM has challenged her to get 250 people who will sign up as prayer supporters. In addition, I need to raise about $14,000 for rent and other expenses and plane tickets to and from. I'm hoping some of both kinds of support can come from MFC. Prayer, of course, is the most important asset. So she has some stuff out in the foyer today, and she's going to try to be out there after the sermon. You can go and chat with her a little bit more, but she's got a sign-up sheet if you want to be a prayer partner and get updates from her. She's got commitment cards for prayer or financial, and reminder bookmarks, right? I had to read this last one. So Lana will be out there in the back, and you can chat with her a little bit more about that. But here's someone who, in my opinion, is doing the work that Paul's talking about here. She's willing to go and do the work that she is being called to for Jesus. It's going to be a sacrifice in many ways, but she's not seeking her own interests, but the interest of the kingdom of God. It's something that she's felt called to, and she's going to do it. So once again, go chat with Lana after this in the hallway. Yeah. Okay, we got a pop quiz coming up here, so don't get too nervous. So as we wrap up here, I want to do a little activity. You can just do this in your own seat. You don't have to get up and run around and do anything crazy. I know I'm the youth guy, but I'm not going to make us play anything weird or anything. So you can do this in your own head, or you can write down on your paper if you want. So I'm just going to ask you to name different people, once again, just in your head or on your paper. First off, name the 5 wealthiest people in the world. See if you can do it. No cheating, no looking up online or anything. You might be able to get 1 or 2, but can you get all 5? Second, so you're coming up with like different lists here, so there's going to be a lot of names, I'm sorry. But second, name the last 5 Heisman Trophy winners. I wouldn't be able to do that one, so don't worry. But maybe you can, but I can't. Number 3, can you name 10 people who have won a Nobel or Pulitzer Prize? And I can't fact check you on all these, so I'm just going to assume you're doing correct here. Number 4, name the last 6 Academy Award winners for Best Actor or Actress. I love going to the movies. I love watching movies. You may have noticed I didn't do any Doctor Strange or Indiana Jones or anything this time, but I love watching movies. But even this one would be hard for me. I'm not sure that I could do it. I know Will Smith. Everyone knows about Will Smith this last year, but beyond that, I don't know if I could name any. And the last one, name the last decade's worth of World Series winners. I know. So, huh? You got an F? Yeah, that's okay. So, it says you may have really exceeded in one or two of these categories, but I'm going to guess that nobody was able to get all of them off the top of your head. Kathy says she got an F, so she's willing to admit that. If you did, come find me after, and I'll buy you Dutch Bros or something, but I don't know. So the point here is that even though these people are recognized as like the best in their fields, they get all these great awards for doing amazing work, but we typically forget yesterday's like headliners. But a few more questions. The quiz is not done. So we got some new lists to make here. First off, name 3 teachers who made an impact on you during school. Next one is name 3 friends who helped you through a difficult time. The third one is name 5 people who taught you a worthwhile skill. Next, name 5 people you enjoy spending time with. Hopefully that one's really easy. And last, name some heroes whose stories have inspired you. So hopefully this last part was way easier and you were able to think about names really quickly. So here's the final thing to wrap it up. I wrote, the people who matter to us and impact our lives are not usually the most famous and rich of the world. People who make the most impact in our lives are the ones who have cared the most for us. We don't typically think of people in the Bible as being like us sometimes, but they had lives like us. They had favorite food, probably favorite towns and places that they traveled to, that they liked going to more than others. They also had friends. We know that Jesus had his 12, but he also had 3 of them who he seemingly spent more time with. Paul had friends, and Timothy and Epaphroditus were 2 of them. So the question that I'm wrapping this up with is, who are your close friends? When was the last time you spent time with them, and how are you encouraging them regularly? So we're going to go into a time of open worship, and I encourage you to think on these things and think of how you're going to reach out to these people this week and encourage them.